And now, it's The Law Show on CL650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law.
And welcome to The Law Show on CL650. I'm Zach Spencer, and today we're talking about accidents for the most part, personal injury. And from McQuarrieHunterLLP, we have Kevin Hyde, partner. Welcome back.
Thanks, Zach.
And why don't you introduce another partner in your personal injury department? Why don't you talk about...
we brought in the big guns today, Zach.
Yeah.
This is the head of our personal injury group, Perry Armitage, who is also my mentor since I've been here at McQuarrie Hunter.
Oh, you see the cameras are on. They're on the radio. We see he has to say nice things.
Well, that's how we prepared him.
That's good. Kevin, we'll get back to you in a moment. Perry, welcome to the first radio show. It's great that you finally made it in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in law and how you got to McQuarrie and why you maybe chose personal injury?
Yeah, well, I graduated from UBC Law School in 1992, and I started articles with another firm in Burnaby for my articling term. And when that wound up, I then started looking around, and I made some calls and got on with Rick Molstad, who is one of my old friends. He's a partner from McQuarrie Hunter, as we then were, and he asked me to come down and interview, and the rest was history.
Had you always been interested in personal injury?
Well, that's interesting. It's a good question. I back in the early 80s, I was working in a warehouse full-time and wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And my girlfriend at the time had gone down to Kwantlen College, and she was going to register me in a psychology course. Mm-hmm. I always had this urge within me to get a higher education, and I thought, well, maybe I'll take a night course with...
See how it goes, right?
See how it goes. Mm-hmm. And she called me up that evening and said, they were full in the psychology department, so I signed you up for a criminal law course. And I was like, what the, thanks a lot. Anyway, I took the course, and it was great. The prof and I really connected. I enjoyed the material, and I really enjoyed learning about the law, and I did well in the course. So that kind of kickstarted me in that direction.
And so why to personal injury? Because I always ask this question of all the lawyers that come in, whether it's family law, like, did you start out with this? And often that's not the case, and they end up in a certain sort of specialty inside of law for certain reasons.
Yeah. Well, when I did my articling term, I was with a firm that did a lot of personal injury. My main principal was pretty much a heavy hitter in the Burnaby area in the field of personal injury, and he took me under his wing, and I learned a lot that year, and I think a lot of the partners of his weren't happy because he was more or less dominating me and gave me a lot more personal injury work than maybe they thought that he should have. But
so you obviously had an aptitude for it then.
And my fiance at the time had just gotten on at ICBC, and she was a personal injury adjuster. So, we had something very, very close in common. We had a lot of interesting conversations after work around the dinner table, looking at it from her perspective and my perspective, and actually learned a lot from her as well.
So I see a common theme here that mentorship is important, and that's what you were just touching on, Kevin.
Yeah.
That this is your mentor in law, right?
Exactly. Well, much like Perry, I was, after I graduated from UBC, my parents are very proud with my double major. I went into furniture moving briefly to a bunch of
and the hockey career wasn't working.
Yeah, the hockey. I wasn't making the NHL. I got that through my head at that point. In any event, my girlfriend at the time was going to law school, and I was told that I was going with her and not pursuing a career as a furniture mover or world traveler afterwards. So that's how I stumbled into law school.
The interesting thing is that you can now have a career as a world traveler, so long as you have enough Instagram followers. That is an actual career now.
Exactly.
How long that lasts, I don't know.
I got home for my 1-year trip after making some money furniture moving, and then made the applications and went to law school. My dad went to law school actually because his a person he was carpooling with for the classes was going to law school, so they just need to match up his classes so he could get a ride out to UBC. So, you know, a lot of people start with not the, I've always had a passion for law, it's just you kind of stumble into it. And in the same way, I found I worked very well with Perry during my early days at McQuarrie Hunter, and just seeing his enthusiasm for helping his clients got me interested as well in becoming a part of the personal injury team.
All right, so let's get into kind of what you do there at McQuarrie. Personal injury, you're dealing mostly, there are other elements to personal injury, but a lot of it is dealing with people who are involved in motor vehicle accidents, right, for the most part?
Correct.
And so why, Perry, should I hire somebody like yourself, a lawyer, to represent me? Can I just deal with, as you mentioned, your girlfriend at the time, the adjuster with ICBC, and do it directly?
Yeah, we get asked that question a fair bit. You know, anyone who's had an injury claim, more often than not, they end up calling ICBC directly to report the claim. And, you know, the adjusters are trained in kind of a customer service-oriented fashion to do whatever they can. And they'll set the person up with benefits. So they'll provide some coverage for the treatment they receive. Maybe it's 10 or 12, 15 physiotherapy visits. And things will go along fairly smoothly. It's only when the adjuster comes to the conclusion that they should be better by now, or they've come to the end of the treatment cycle, they'll then start to try to put a little pressure on the claimant to try to resolve the case. And in our experience, you know, we hear these stories a lot. People end up coming to us because they've grown dissatisfied with ICBC. The adjuster now is starting to become a little more skeptical of the claim, starting to ask a lot more questions. At this point, they have compelled production of their entire medical history and maybe their entire employment history. And, you know, there seems to be a bit of a falling out. And so they come to us.
Or do they feel a little suspicious that this is, you know, why they're putting the squeeze on me now? There's sort of some sort of sixth sense that they get this maybe isn't right?
Well, I think so. And you know, the adjuster's job is to try to settle the file, and as quickly as possible. And the reason they try to settle early is because they can usually settle it for a lower amount. And you know, for me, it's critically important that we know what we're dealing with from a medical perspective. So my focus is always to try to secure an expert opinion on my client's prognosis. And until I know what that prognosis is, I'm not going to recommend settlement. And quite often it takes months or even years in some cases before the experts can arrive at a reasonably clear prognosis. And the reason the prognosis is so important is because it's really a statement about where that person will be with those injuries into the future, which I think, you know, is pretty important.
Oh, Kevin, you'd mentioned in the past that often the adjusters will say, oh, I'll set you up with a round of chiropractic and massage and physiotherapy, and they make it seem like they're doing you a favor, but in fact, that is part of your coverage that you pay for when you get an ICBC policy, right?
Those paying for your treatment costs, repairing your vehicle, even providing you with some household services to help you out with chores around the house if you're unable to do that. That's all under your Part 7 benefits, and you're entitled to those benefits under your insurance policy, whether you're at fault for the accident or not, whether you're the person running into someone you know, who's stopped at a stoplight, that person is going to get those benefits.
But they make it feel like they're doing you a favor,
and they make it feel like they're
right?
doing you a favor.
Right.
In reality, what they're trying to do is get you to sign a release for your tort claim, and that's where we should step in. And we are, as the lawyers, can properly quantify what you're entitled to, what type of compensation you're entitled to, and give you that assurance that you're getting a fair amount. We do so by looking at the various heads of damage that most people, I didn't know before I became a personal injury lawyer, but most people are completely unaware of. So when you get you to sign on that dotted line, that release, there's no turning it back. It's over and done with. And
you can't go back.
You can't go back. And if you have a flare-up or if these injuries are ongoing, or worst case scenario, you know, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you realize, oh, that shoulder injury, that requires surgery. it's you've signed that release already and settled for $10,000 when your claim could have been worth several $100,000 potentially.
All right, let's flip this on its head. Now, people are always saying, "Oh, lawyers are, they make a good living, and why would I engage with a lawyer when they're going to take a certain part of my settlement when I could just do it on my own?"
Yeah, well, you're at an extreme disadvantage if you're trying to negotiate a settlement with ICBC. I mean, they're doing this on a daily basis. And
you don't have any reference point where you have many years of doing this.
Exactly. Most injured people have never had to deal with ICBC in this way before. They just don't know where to start. They don't know how to quantify the case or where to look or what all the heads of damages are and how to bring that forward, how to prove their loss under each head of damage. I had a case a couple of years ago, which I settled for a young lady. We received an expert medical report from her GP who said basically that she'd made a full recovery, and my client was in full agreement with that opinion, and that was 10 months after the accident. I negotiated a settlement for her. We got $40,000, and when you factor in my fee, that's a pretty good amount for the client. About a week later, I had a guy come in into my office looking to retain me, and his facts were almost identical. He had made a full recovery before the 1 year mark, very similar injuries. He was of similar age. In both cases, there was no income loss and no other, substantial losses. And he had accepted a settlement with ICBC and signed a release for $5,000. And I just said, I'm sorry, you've signed the release.
That's what Kevin says. Once it's signed, it's done, right?
It was done. The only way to undo it is to, go to a lot of time and expense and roll the dice and hope to get lucky. It's very, very difficult to break a release once it's signed.
We're going to take a quick break. We're speaking with Kevin Hyde and Perry Armitage from McQuarrieHunterLLP. We're talking about personal injury. When we come back, we're going to talk about, ICBC claims that go to trial. Do all of them go to trial when you sign up with a lawyer? Are you going to go to trial? We'll find out more about that next on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.